All right, YouTube, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. It is Thursday, November 21st. We have just 4 games on today's NBA slate. In today's video, I'm going to dive into this game. I'm going to give you my prediction on the side. I'll give you my prediction on the total. We'll talk about any of the plays, like player props that we like in the game as well. But as always, keep an eye on the final plays for what I'm actually rolling with myself. All that will be in the pinned comment for free, so make sure to keep an eye on that. In terms of last night, so we had 4 plays. We caught 4 L's. We were the dustpan, the reverse sweep last night. I could make excuses and say that, a couple of the plays were just 1 point off from hitting and whatnot, but I don't think this is the place to be making excuses because you win some by 1 point and whatnot as well. So unfortunately, we'll do it again. One more womp womp for your boy here. To switch up the vibe though, ride of the day. Consecutive winner here, Jacob. Let's pump in some crowd noise for his 5th straight ride of the day cash. Damian Lillard over 10.5 rebounds plus assist. He comes through. This is now his 5th win in a row. Only a couple people have done 5 before, and nobody has hit 6. So Jacob could be making history with today's ride of the day. If you guys don't know what the ride of the day is, it's simple. Just use hashtag ride of the day in the comments. Give me your favorite play. I jump on board with one person's play each and every day. Give you a shout out in the next video, win or loss. I also shout you out over on my X right there and on the Guy Boston site. If you win, we continue to ride with your play the next day, and if you lose, we do got to talk about it and face the womp womp like we just did. But go ahead and get those hashtag ride of the days in the comments. Let's jump into the slate. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and let's get rolling here. Just 4 games, but we'll do our best to bounce back from yesterday. You never want to press and try and dig yourself out of somewhat of a hole and whatnot, so we're not going to force anything just because of yesterday, right? But let's dive into game number 1 here. We got Charlotte taking on Detroit. Charlotte coming into this one 5-9 so far this year. They are a little bit better at home, 4-3 against the number 8-6. Excuse me. Detroit's been having like a for Detroit standards, right? The Pistons standards as of the last 5 years or so. They've had a respectable year, 7-9, 9-6-1 against the number. On the road, 4-4. Here they are laying a point as the road team, and I understand why. I think that defensively, this is the far better team in Detroit. Even offensively, I think that these two teams could be comparable when it comes to efficiency and whatnot, but Detroit overall just much, much better. And Charlotte likes to shoot a lot of threes. We've talked about that, right? Second in terms of frequency over the last 10 games of above the break threes. Detroit, not exactly the worst team at stopping threes. They're not the best, but on the road this year, actually the 3rd fewest points allowed from 3. So there's a little nugget to note there. And then one thing, obviously in the paint, Detroit should dominate this game both offensively and defensively. So if Charlotte's shots aren't falling, I don't see where they pivot to continue to try and, score and keep this game close in a sense. So we do have 2 teams that I'm not exactly thrilled with either one of them, but I think Detroit gets my nod here in this one. Essentially being a pick 'em too, I don't mind Detroit. That total is sitting at 220. I think this is an under type of a game. Now 220 is kind of right on that threshold of a really low scoring game, or maybe you can even have somewhat of a low scoring game and still hit above 220. But to me, I'm going to lean towards the under. I think if this Detroit team slows the pace down, Charlotte hasn't even been playing fast this year. Actually, they are a slower pace team than Detroit, but they like to score in threes, which always can worry me, right? But I think Detroit slows this game down and makes it tough for Charlotte to score. And then on the other side of things, it's like I already mentioned it. I don't think either one of these teams are like offensive superstar type teams, right? They do have offensive superstars, but not exactly the best of the best when it comes to scoring buckets. Now, from a player perspective here, one good spot may be Cade Cunningham, over 15.5 rebounds plus assists. He's cashed it in, 9 straight games or so. Actually, 1, 2, 3, 4. 9 straight games. Over his last 10 here, he's been averaging 18. And I like his minutes. We're going to get a decent amount of those, right? But I like his rebound chances and his potential assists. Both of those look pretty damn good. And this one isn't even pulling in. So these are a little bit higher than you'd think. And then look at Charlotte against the point guard position. 25th in terms of rebounds allowed. So what is that? 6th the most. And then 23rd, so 7th or 8th most in terms of assists allowed. I like his spot here to be involved in this game. Last time he played them, we saw it back in 3 weeks ago or so, or 2 weeks ago, and he had 10 and 10, a double-double alone with the rebounds and assists there. He had 20 points in that game as well. Charlotte won by 1, so it was a close game. But yeah, I like Cade Cunningham's spot here. The only thing I would say that maybe keeps us off of that is that 15.5, we're kind of buying it at a high, right? Like maybe not the best time to look at and say, now let's jump on board, but that's the only sort of negative I could think of it. Oh, and real quick, guys, I forgot to mention it, but our Thursday night football video is live here on the channel. If you are looking for that, it's right on the channel. We got the Steelers and the Browns. I got a few plays that I'm looking at and looking to finalize some as well. So go ahead and check out that video. It came out yesterday. Always Thursday night football videos coming out on Wednesday at 3 p.m. So it is live now if you do want to go ahead and check that out. Next up, we have Toronto taking on Minnesota here. Toronto actually coming off of a win after losing, 7 straight, 8 straight, something like that, right? Minnesota coming off of 2 wins here, Sacramento and Phoenix. They are now back on the road here to take on Toronto. And they have, I wouldn't say a look-ahead spot, I guess, because in a couple days they play the Celtics, but they do play Toronto and then the Celtics. So take that what you will. I don't really read into a look-ahead spot that's not like within the next 24 hours or even 48 maximum type of thing, right? But just wanted to mention that. This is a home game here for Toronto, and then they embark upon a long-ish road trip. So overall, I think that both teams could be kind of dreading what's coming or the future, but not exactly focusing on it for tonight, right? Toronto getting 7 points as an underdog. I've seen some 7.5s out there as well, and they've already played this year. Minnesota beat them 112-101. There could be some news with Scottie Barnes. Scottie Barnes could be coming back here for Toronto, which is obviously a big deal for him. He missed 11 games, which is just, I think he only played 1 or 2 games, right? But overall, he's coming back. If he does, that's a massive boost for Toronto. Obviously, we can't forget how good that kid is. On the other side of things, we have Mike Conley and Dante DiVincenzo both listed as questionable. I'll say this: I don't think I touch this if Scottie Barnes does not play, but I'll keep an eye on that injury, and I don't mind the 7.5 points for Toronto. This is a Minnesota team that is heavily reliant on shooting the threes this year. Toronto, not all that terrible at stopping the perimeter. In fact, above the break, 28.1% field goal percentage against in the last 10 games. That's a really, really good percentage. And then in terms of just on the season, 7th fewest points allowed from 3. Now, the one thing that I'll also say that favors Toronto, I guess, on the offensive side of things is they like scoring inside. Nobody in the last 10 games has shot more restricted area shots than the Toronto Raptors. They're number 1 in frequency, and this is a Minnesota team that all year long has kind of struggled at stopping points in the paint. 5th most points in the paint, both on the season in the last 3 games, and the 6th most on the road. So if Toronto can get some easy buckets and Scottie Barnes comes back, I could see Minnesota winning this game, but Toronto potentially keeping it close. I know maybe it's crazy to look at this game and say, well, Minnesota already beat them. Scottie Barnes, I believe, even played in that one, if I'm not mistaken. I might have that wrong, but to me, it's just too big of a number. So yeah, I'll sound the psycho alert alarm. Toronto plus the points here. In terms of what we have for a total, I'm not sold on either side here. I would probably say an under if Toronto's going to play decent defense, right? And that they're going to be scoring a lot of 2s because that's what should be their bread and butter, and it shouldn't be that tough against this Minnesota team. So the pace could be kind of low, and we have it in our back pocket that last time they played, it was 112-101. Like, Minnesota didn't necessarily go off. Now, the one thing I will say, Minnesota was on kind of like a dry streak, right? If we look at their last 5 games from least recent to most recent, 95-94 win over Miami, low scoring. 122-108 win over Portland. Okay, well, Portland didn't score many points, but somewhat, I guess, middle scoring, right? And then they go 106-98 against Portland. That was a low-scoring game. But then the last 2 games here, 130-126. Actually, they lost to Portland. I don't know if I said they won to Portland. But 126-130 against Sacramento, 120-117 against Phoenix. So, yeah, I guess they started to play a little bit faster and a little bit more points being scored. But neither one of these teams are that high of pace, and I do think that there could be some defensive edge here in this game. So, yeah, I'll lean towards a slight underlean. Now, from a player prop perspective, probably just going to consider RJ Barrett here. I thought about his points, but I do think that can get muddied if Scottie Barnes comes back, even if he's on a minutes restriction. That's such a crucial piece of their team, right? But what I don't mind is a potential look at his points plus assists with Scottie Barnes. That should help him. If we look at it last year, only 20 of 58 games, and I haven't even done this yet, so this help us see this overall. With Scottie Barnes last year, 11 of 25, so a little bit better of a percentage, right? It jumps up 10%. So I think that Scottie Barnes gives another person that he can pass to. So yeah, maybe this is a consideration. It is kind of high. He's been going off offensively as of late. Like, even just look at his points, right? 22, 25, 39. He's had a couple 30-point games, but with this points plus assists, what I like is, okay, last 10 games here, averaging nearly 11 potential assists per game. So he should get 5 or 6 assists, and the shots are there, shooting nearly 20 times a game. So I like the spot. He'll bump to the small forward too. Minnesota on the season don't rank all that well in terms of stopping points and assists to the small forward position either. So Scotty Barnes is definitely a consideration that we're looking at here as well. But yeah, maybe it's crazy, but I'm considering Toronto in this one. All right, real quick, guys, I know this is an NBA video, but for the Thursday night football game tonight, Underdog does have a Jameis Winston 0.5 total yard square. He can run for it, he can pass for it. Go ahead and check out Underdog. If you don't know what it is a DFS app that you can use in pretty much most of the states here in the U.S., which is really, really cool. But you pick more or less or higher or lower on set projections for players. The more you win, the more you can get paid out. So go ahead and check it out. They also have a great deposit sign-up bonus going on as of right now. I believe it's up to 1,000, which is absolutely crazy. So go check this square out. Again, that link will be down below. I'll also put it on the Guy Boston Sports site. Wherever you can find it conveniently, you will see it. So go check out Underdog, guys. Again, that link is down below. Get that Jameis square right now. Let's go ahead and jump back into these last two games here. All right, Spurs taking on the Jazz here. A lot of injuries to note. So in terms of guys that are not out, so game time decisions here, Chris Paul, Zach Collins, and Jordan Clarkson. Jordan Clarkson being for the Jazz. On the other side of things, Devin Vassell out, Sohan still out, and then Wembanyama still out as well for the Spurs. So obviously those are massive. And then Walker Kessler on the side for the Jazz. So a lot of crucial guys either questionable or not playing in this one. The Spurs got a win without Wemby against OKC a couple nights ago, and I think that, they were 9.5-point dogs in that one. They were at home, so they had that going for them, but overall, that is a clap it up type spot, right? Good for them. I don't know how sustainable the non-Victor Wembanyama Spurs are, though, if that makes sense. OKC clearly had an off night, and that is not the same team without Chet Holmgren, right? So that's obviously worth noting. They shot over 40% from three. They shot nearly 50% from the field. I think it was 47 point something. So obviously they had a good night, and they caught the Thunder having a bad night. Now Utah, I think it's pretty hard for them to have good nights nowadays, but I will say they haven't had the easiest of schedule. Their last 5 games, Phoenix, Dallas, Sacramento, Clippers, and the Lakers, and they've won one of those 5 games. I don't necessarily sit here and think that this is going to be a great spot for Utah by any means, but it is worth noting last time they played on November 9th, the Jazz squeaked one out. They were 6.5-point dogs, and they won this thing outright in San Antonio. So I think I'm going to look at the Jazz getting 3.5. They also played earlier in the year, and the Spurs spanked them, so take that if you are on the Spurs today. But yeah, I just can't. I don't think there's enough for me to be convinced of this Spurs team, especially if, Zach Collins is now out. Where do you go from the big man position, right? And then what if Chris Paul's out? I think that's going to be tough. You have Vassell, Wembanyama, Sohan. All these guys are not playing, so makes it a little bit tough for me to like what we're seeing here. The one thing I'll say is the Spurs last 10 games have been shooting a lot of above the break threes. Not exactly Utah's forte at stopping. They're averaging, I think it's 38.4 something like that percent against, which isn't all that great in terms of field goal against. And they're allowing the 5th most points from 3. So if you're on the Spurs, there are definitely paths and weaves to get there. So I'm not trying to talk you off of it. But for me today, I think I'm going to take the points. Give me Utah. From a total perspective here, sitting at 223. That number's a little low. I don't see where the defense is coming from. You have the worst defensive efficiency team in the league in Utah going up against kind of middle of the pack defense in San Antonio. And San Antonio is good at preventing points in the paint, right? But Utah only shooting the 5th fewest restricted area shots. They do shoot a decent amount from in the paint, but that is restricted area extended. So I don't necessarily see where the defense comes in here for either team. So if we're getting some buckets to some degree in both ways, 223.5 does not seem like it's all that tough to get to. And from a player prop perspective, I got nothing so far. If I add anything on the site, it'll be there in the final plays. I'll give you a little blurb as to why I do like it, because obviously I'll update it if we don't talk about it in the video. But not exactly loving many player props in this one. All right, Lakers taking on Orlando to round us out here today. Lakers favored in this one. They are playing some good basketball. They've won 6 straight games. They've won 7 of their last 10. Going up against Orlando, who has also won a decent amount of games recently, 6 of their last 10. They were on a 6-game win streak, and the Clippers broke that win streak just a couple nights back. Or not a couple nights back, was it yesterday? So obviously, both teams kind of playing well. You do obviously have the back-to-back factor. If it was, let's make sure that was yesterday, November 20th between those two teams. The brain's going, guys. But overall, yeah, you have a spot here in which both teams playing good basketball. I will say Lakers are at home. Orlando's on a back-to-back. There's plenty that we can look at here and be all right, I don't know if this is necessarily the best spot for Orlando. But at the same time, we can acknowledge that 5 points is kind of a lot, right? Especially if this Orlando team is good defensively, which so far this year, second best defensive efficiency team. Now, the offense isn't there. The Lakers are actually one of the most efficient offenses in the season, but, good defense can counter good offense, right? And vice versa. But one thing I will note is that the Lakers score a lot of their buckets, or at least attempt to, from the restricted area. And this has been a good Orlando team. In fact, on the season, the fewest amount of points in the paint allowed. So that could give the Lakers some headaches. I'd say in this one, and I don't know if I get there myself, but I would say Lakers win this one, Orlando covers. Like, I think that they're good enough defensively and can keep this pace down and slow enough that we may see them keep this game close, and it's like a 1 to 2 possession game at the end, in which that 5 points may be enough to kind of cover it, right? So yeah, I'll lean Orlando. If you're looking for the money line, I do think the Lakers are playing better basketball and just are not as hurt and injured. So I think that that's where I would go. But again, with those points, I don't mind Orlando. That total is sitting at 217. If the Lakers go out there and run, this number is going to look silly. Like, they're going to be able to score. And if Orlando has some tired defensive legs after their back-to-back and whatnot, like, I do understand that. But again, everything that I'm saying here is giving a lot of credence and credit to that Magic defense, right? So I'm going to stick to my gut, my big old gut here. I'm going to stick to it and lean towards the under. And then from a player prop perspective, the only thing that I really am at right now, and I don't know if it's too high of a number. I'm still trying to think about it, but it's going to be Franz Wagner here, 25.5 points over. Yeah, that's a big number. Last time he played the Lakers last season, he did cash it with 26, so just barely. He's been looking good as of late, and one thing I'll say is the Lakers do not protect the rim all that well, or the paint. Franz Wagner leads the team, no kidding, right? He's shooting a lot, but he leads the team in both restricted area attempts as well as in the paint attempts outside of the restricted area in the last 10 games. So he'd be a look for me, but he's shooting the ball, 23 plus times. If he does that, he is in his last 5. In fact, he had an off game last night, but let's see. Yeah, 22 attempts per game, and that is including last night's 11 attempts. So before that, he was right over 23 in terms of an average. So if he does that against this Lakers team, I do think he's a good chance that he goes for 26, because who else is kind of scoring right now? So we'll see. It is definitely a high number, though. But guys, that's going to wrap for today's show. If you guys made it this far in the video, go ahead and comment 17. Appreciate the heck out of you guys. Let's bounce back after a tough Wednesday. But you know what? We were due for one of those. We were cruising. We were on a great run. We were due for a little bit of a reality check, and we got just that. So I'm not frowning about it. I'm not throwing in the towel, nothing like that. It does sting. It does leave a bad taste in my mouth, but we're not going to cry about it. We're going to focus on today. Rear view mirrors are smaller than windshields for a reason, like I always tell you guys. But catch you guys in the next one, all right? Peace out.